So to continue on for our Joe Dumars series, especially with the NBA draft being right around the corner, Joe Dumars spoke to Fletcher Macro about what this pick sends a message to the fan base and what does this mean about this new era of Pelicans basketball right around the corner. So we're going to talk about that now in the Pelicans Scoop. Cue my music!
This is the Pelican Scoop with Jordan Kitchens, breaking down everything under the sun about your New Orleans Pelicans. Smash that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to stay on top of your Pels content. Now, running point, here's Jordan.
What is good, YouTube? Welcome back to another edition of the Pelican Scoop. I am your host with the most, Jordan Kitchens, and ladies and gentlemen, we gotta dive into the nitty-gritty, the final part of the Joe Dumars mini-series, I guess you can say. So we done already broke down about how does Joe feel about Zion. We done already broke down about how does Joe Dumars feel about Willie Green, and now finally we're gonna break down about how does Joe Dumars feel about this NBA draft and what does this mean to the fan base, because he was very adamant on mentioning that this is a message to the fan base. He's like, every time you make a draft pick, it sends a message to the fan base that this is the direction that the franchise is going to take. And truthfully, I think Joe gave us some very good insight on where his mind will be at during the draft and give you a little bit of where his thinking is and where his mindset will be going into the draft. So furthermore, we're going to start it off with the first clip about Joe Dumars talking about the message it sends to a fan base about which pick they're going to select.
Draft is coming up. That's going to be one of the first 10 polls where we have to make a stand about who we are, and it's going to be anytime you do a draft, Fletcher, it's a signal to who you want to be. You're kind of saying to the public and to your organization and to your players and to your coaches and everybody who you want to be, what represents you. And so the draft will be the first of many situations where we get to identify who we are.
So I do appreciate the approach that Joe is taking with this. He's like, look, I know for a fact that this is going to send a message to the fan base, going to send a message to the whole world, basically, the league, everybody that knows, that's in the know. This is the new era of Pelicans basketball, and this is the direction that this team is going to take. Now, whoever that pick will be, is it Con Knipple? Is it Jeremiah Fears? We don't know. But Joe did speak about what type of player he's going to be looking at. But first, before we get into that, we have to talk about Bryson Graham. So if you guys don't know, Bryson Graham was the general manager for the Pelicans team, I think the last 2 years, or was last year. We're talking about a guy that was an intern for the New Orleans Hornets. So we're talking about somebody that came in from the bottom, then worked his way up from an intern of a team that doesn't exist anymore, then worked his way up from an intern to the vice president of basketball operations for an NBA franchise. So I gotta clap it up, man. You know, it's good to see brothers out here succeeding and thriving in their environments. And let's just talk about Bryson Graham real quick. So the Atlanta Hawks and new general manager Ansi Salah are finalizing deals to hire New Orleans Pelicans GM Bryson Graham as the team's senior VP of basketball operations and Philadelphia 76ers executive Peter Dinwiddie as senior VP of strategy and analytics, sources tell ESPN. So yes, shout out to Bryson. New beginnings in Atlanta, you know, good city to be in. So basically, the Atlanta Hawks are doubling down on Dyson Daniels. Like, all right, this is the guy that drafted Dyson Daniels. This is the guy that scouted Dyson Daniels. So Bryson was a scout. Like, he has worn every hat in this franchise, and maybe the Atlanta Hawks really feel like they found a diamond in the rough. I'm not gonna say maybe. I do think they found a diamond in the rough. So you've seen the David Griffin underlings, you know, the Trajan Langfords go out there and become the president of basketball operations for the Pistons. And you see now Bryson Graham is going to be the new president of basketball operations for the Atlanta Hawks. So that makes sense why Joe Dumars brought in Troy Weaver. So as he said, this is sending a message. So he's sending a message to the fan base. I brought in all my old guys from Detroit, and we're going to see what we can do. I don't know. You got the boys back in town, got the boys back together. Only time will tell, but shout out to Trajan Langford and shout out to Bryson Graham, you know, finding a way to get up out of David Griffin's udders, you know, getting out from underneath David Griffin udders, finding your own spot and thriving, and I love to see it. Nothing but praise and blessings to both of them. Nothing but praise and blessings to both of them. And they're both Eastern Conference, so I really don't care. We don't got to see you. So shout out to Bryson, shout out to Trajan. Anyways, let's get back to the matter at hand. So we're fully bought in with Joe Dumars talking about, you know, this is going to be the message he's going to send to the fan base. But we're not done there yet. End of the clip. It's a little bit longer than the first part. He starts talking about positionless basketball and his idea of what he thinks this pick should be and what his envision of this team and this dynamic of this team will be going into the future of this Joe Dumars era.
Yeah, I am a huge advocate of positionless basketball. Bigs being able to get out and play in the open court. I love the three to a limit. I don't like bad threes. I don't like bad threes, but I like the three ball. I like the game the way it is. But more so importantly, and what we discussed at the league office for the last 3 or 4 years is this. What I really like is intense competition. And you just saw that with Indiana and New York. You just saw that with Minnesota and OKC. The intense competition is what draws fans in. People wake up the next day and like, did you see that game last night? It was incredible. That's what draws people in, and so that's what I really want to bring here to New Orleans, like intense competition where people wake up the next day and go, did you see the Pelicans last night? Like, it was crazy, that game last night. That's what you want to draw, more so than did he shoot a three, or was it a late, that's secondary to me. The intensity of drawing people in, that's the number one thing you want to bring here.
I'm gonna have a little bit of pushback with Joe right here. I get it. Everybody wants to be positionless basketball, but we've already seen where that has kind of derailed this team a little bit. You know, you're trying to find guys that tweeners, and when you really need guys that, all right, this is their exact position they play. Like, this guy's a center, he needs to be a center. Oh, this guy's a forward, well, he just needs to be a forward. Like, you get lost in the sauce a little bit just trying to find too many tweeners and too many guys that can just have all these different skill sets, when really you need guys that just can do this. You need guys that can just, you need guys that, oh, he can rebound, well, he can rebound, right? Or he can shoot, he can shoot. You know, having these tweeners and whatnot, you know, it's a little whatever. I get it. You know, everybody wants to think they can find a big man that can shoot, dribble, pass, Victor Wembanyama. All right, everybody wants a Wemby, Evan Mobley. Everybody wants one of those guys. But those guys just don't grow on trees. They really don't. Does this mean that they're going to try and reach on somebody just because he's more positionless than a guy that is set in stone? Oh, he's a point guard? Well, he's going to play point guard. You know, I was a little, you know, the Lonzo Ball situation, Stan Van Gundy taking the ball out of Lonzo's hands, you know, starting at point Zion, whatnot, making Lonzo more of a catch and shoot guy when Lonzo's a traditional point guard. This team played a lot better when the ball was in Lonzo's hands. Yeah, Zion's more flashy, more this and that, more spectacular, but you rather have a real point guard setting Zion up than sitting and having the ball in Zion's hands all the damn time. You know, it's just, we didn't see where this positionless basketball can go. You know, it can be really good. You know, you can be like OKC and just have a bunch of guys that can play, or you can be like the Pelicans a couple years back and just got a bunch of wings, no guards. You got CJ McCollum playing point guard, who's not a point guard. You know, you're just trying to make guys fit where they don't fit. But I do agree wholeheartedly about a statement about making the Pelicans competitive, making intense competition. Making it like, hey, man, you seen that Pelicans game last night? Like, oh, my goodness. Like, that, make that in a good way. Not in a bad way. Because nowadays, people's like, you seen the Pelicans game last night? Yeah, they lost by 30. Oh, yeah, they couldn't come back in the fourth again. So I agree. He wants to try and make this team competitive. He's going to bring that competitive nature. He's already spoken about that multiple times. Go back and watch some of my Joe Dumars videos. Every time I bring a clip about him, he's always talking about competition and making them respectable and accountability. Those are pretty much the three things that he said a lot this whole time that I've been breaking him down, and I agree. You know, that he's going to bring that type of spirit to this team where, you know, the Smoothie King Center is not just where Devin Booker comes and lights it on fire. It's like, oh, your hopes and dreams come to die. Your hopes and dreams come to die in the blender. You hop in the blender, you get blended up into a smoothie. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what this team needs. You don't need to be... You're going to Smoothie King Center, they got more Lakers jerseys in there than Pelicans jerseys, right? You know, I get it's the Lakers, but still, you know, that's what I'm talking about. They over here cheering for LeBron and all that. But they need to be booing LeBron. They need to be booing LeBron. So if he's going to bring that type of competitive drive, just that fire and orb that this team needs, I agree. But I think don't get lost in the sauce by trying to find a guy that's, oh, he's positionless. He can do all these different, he's a jack of, what is it? What's the jack of all trades but master of none, something like that. I can't think of the statement, but I think it's like he's the jack of all trades but the master of none, or like you have all these different talents but you don't master anything, right? Cool, you're well versed in all these different things, but you don't really do any of one of those things particularly well. You just do it good enough to say like, oh, you can't do it. That's the type of statement that I hope Joe doesn't get lost in the sauce. There's goods and bads of being positionless basketball, of course. Like you can say, you can be the extreme of it, and you can be like OKC. You know, you got a whole bunch of guys out there that they can switch 1 through 5. You know, everybody on the court can switch 1 through 5. And every team can be able to do that. You know, like the Celtics Celtics last year when they won the championship, you know, a lot of positionless basketball. You know, so I get that. I wholeheartedly get it. But just don't get lost in the sauce trying to find guys that, you know, you're just compiling tweeners and don't really have guys that are set in stone. He's a power forward. He's a center. Like, this guy's a center. This guy's a point guard now. He needs to play point guard. No more having shooting guards playing point guards, small forwards playing power forwards, you know, power forwards that playing center, your Larry Nance Juniors. Find guys that fit their roles and play their position. That's all I'm asking for. But I get it. It's the new NBA, new age. You do need to have means of being positionless. I don't think everybody needs to be positionless. Don't go too crazy with it. But y'all let me know down in the comments, what do y'all feel about Joe's statements? What do you guys feel about this draft? So after hearing what he says, who do y'all think he's going to draft now? Or he's going to look at? Is he going to look at one of these American guys? He's going to go ahead and grab Kostas Boufis from Greece. I don't know, man, but I'm excited. I'm very excited to see where this goes, because either way it goes, I'm going to give you guys the best content possible. So thank you guys for sticking in for another edition of the Pelicans Scoop. I've been your host with the Jordan Kitchens, man. Hop in them comments, man. Y'all let me know. And I'm signing out. Peace.